When it comes to the biggest critic of one Kyrie Irving, there's none bigger than Stephen A. Smith. And Stephen A. back in the day, when it was acceptable, it was kind of public mainstream to bash Kyrie non-stop. He had no problem doing that on the biggest platform in all of sports. Now here's the funny thing. Stephen A. from 2020 to 2023 really had no reflection, no apology, or nothing positive to say about Kyrie Irving, the player or the person. But conveniently enough, when Dallas makes the West Finals, they're up 3-1 on Minnesota. Now Stephen A. all of a sudden has had this massive epiphany revelation that Kyrie Irving, he was done dirty by the media, and Stephen A. in particular.
The TNT crew was discussing the evolution of Kyrie Irving this postseason. Because Kyrie Irving obviously has gone through so much, being accused of anti-Semitism or anti-Semitic remarks just because he retweeted something and stuff like that, getting suspended, having to deal with some of the things he's had to deal with, the whole COVID thing and, not wanting to play, not wanting to take the vaccine and all of this other stuff, ultimately missing an abundance of games and, obviously things going south in Brooklyn with him, Kevin Durant and James Harden.
So stopping it right there, this so-called apology, why it was brought on is Kenny Smith on TNT kind of called out Stephen A. Smith for bashing Kyrie back in 2020, 2021, and even as late as 2022. So the root of this apology, why it's coming out, isn't because Stephen A. is necessarily sorry, it's because Kenny Smith called him out publicly on national television. And I can't help but notice Stephen A. Smith's demeanor right here, very reserved, almost whispering, and kind of in a somber tone, which is very, very different from back in the day on First Take, where he was bombastic, borderline yelling, and almost begging for the NBA to suspend Kyrie and kick him out of the league. And the funniest thing for Stephen A. Smith right here, he's saying that people in the media, social media, they were accusing Kyrie of various things, kind of passing it off that, he wasn't one of those people, when in all actuality, he was the tip of the spear of the anti-Kyrie narrative. And here's the funny thing. Stephen A. Smith's personal attacks on Kyrie Irving, they shouldn't be affected by Kyrie's play on the court. Whether he's playing good, playing bad, it shouldn't matter. If you actually want to apologize, Kyrie's on-the-court play is team success, it shouldn't matter. But again, this timing, very, very convenient with Dallas in the West Finals on the verge of the NBA Finals.
You look at those situations and you just found yourself saying, damn, this is a bad situation. It's really bad. And Kyrie's name was all over it. And then he lost the sneaker deal and all he had was basketball. But the evolution of Kyrie Irving this postseason has been nothing short of spectacular, and he deserves a lot of credit for it.
So stopping it very quickly, the word evolution, it's already been used twice. And he's saying the evolution of Kyrie in this year's postseason. Now let's think about it. The postseason started April 21st. Currently when these comments are made, it is May 31st. Now ask yourself the question, in a little over a month's time, what transformation, metamorphosis has Kyrie undergone specifically? He's undergone no change as a person or as a player. What's actually changed is Kyrie's team being successful and making a deep playoff run. And don't get it twisted. If Kyrie's team was failing, they missed the playoffs, they were a first round, second round exit, this apology would not be happening. Again, to remind you guys, the root of this apology wasn't from Stephen A. Smith himself, but from Kenny Smith calling out Stephen A. on Inside the NBA. To me personally, this so-called apology, very inauthentic and just downright phony.
And all of them talked to me, and they weren't disagreeing with what I was saying, but they were addressing the fervor with which I talked about Kyrie. And I really didn't see it that way. I felt like I had looked out for Kyrie Irving on many, many occasions until I couldn't. And then I felt that his attitude towards me had changed and it felt like betrayal. I let that go. But then when his father, I felt, came at me the wrong way, I reacted like I react. I ain't backing up.
So stopping it right there, Stephen A. Smith still not really admitting he was wrong. As according to himself, People weren't disagreeing with what he said about Kyrie, but they were disagreeing with the passion in which he said it in, which in a way is kind of Stephen A. Smith hedging his bets, saying he wasn't really wrong, he just went too far with how enthusiastic he was. And one line that did catch me was the following.
I felt like I had looked out for Kyrie Irving on many, many occasions until I couldn't, and then I felt that his attitude towards me had changed and it felt like betrayal.
Now that line right there is pretty telling, and what it tells me is Stephen A. Smith really has no backbone, no conviction to go against the grain. And if the ESPN higher-ups tell him to defend someone or push back on someone, he'll do it at the drop of a hat. And if he had any moral backbone, really any conviction, he would have defended Kyrie no matter what. But according to him in his own words, he couldn't do it up to a certain point. And Stephen A. says word for word, Kyrie's attitude towards him felt like betrayal. Again, where's the accountability for Stephen A. Smith on his part? Right here, what he's saying is that Kyrie Irving, he betrayed Stephen A. Smith first, and then the backlash came against Kyrie.
Kenny Smith placed that call to me that I had to look at myself differently, because he reminded me of those numerous people that raised Kyrie. They also influenced me. And when I talked about Kyrie in the fashion that I talked about him, it wasn't just a reflection on him, it was a reflection on them. And when I looked at it that way, it gave me cause to pause. And then I remembered having an argument on First Take on ESPN with Jay Williams, and Jay Williams wasn't even attacking what I said. He was attacking the energy and how I said it. And I thought about that, and I said, damn, he's got a point.
Look, I'm speaking for myself right here. I do not buy it. Stephen A. Smith, the most narcissistic, self-indulgent man in sports, all of a sudden took a minute, looked in the mirror, and had self-reflection, this just grand epiphany as Dallas in the West Finals. I do not buy it for a single second. What this comes down to is Stephen A. Smith covering his own behind, and this so-called apology, for the third time, it's rooted in Kenny Smith calling out Stephen A. on national television. And I can guarantee you Stephen A. Smith, he's seen the First Take clips from 2020, 2021, and they're aging like milk now 3 years later. So what he's doing, he's covering his own behind, going above and beyond, praising Kyrie. You know, he's so phenomenal, he's evolved. It's only been a month, but you know, Kyrie, he's changed so much, he's grown up so much in this short period of time. Kyrie Irving hasn't changed a bit. He's the same dude he was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and probably 7 years ago. What's actually changed is the Dallas Mavericks, co-led by Kyrie, going into the West Finals. And Stephen A. Smith, knowing those takes are out there, he's covering his own butt because the receipts are going to be nasty if Dallas wins the championship. And one more line I do want to address is the following.
Because he reminded me of those numerous people that raised Kyrie. They also influenced me. And when I talked about Kyrie in the fashion that I talked about him, it wasn't just a reflection on him, it was a reflection on them.
So Stephen A. conveniently 2 years later, with Dallas on the verge of making the finals, now all of a sudden he's realized, you know, me trashing Kyrie personally might offend people close to him, his inner circle, or his family and his father. You know, I never thought of that 2 years ago, but all of a sudden with Dallas in the West Finals, now I had that epiphany.
I'm not one that usually gives a shit what anybody thinks. I stand on what I stand on. I feel the way that I feel because I pride myself in being man enough to acknowledge when I'm wrong if I think I'm wrong, because I think it's rare. But I was wrong. And for Kenny Smith to tell me that, it hit home in a big way because we go back more than 30 years. And I can count on two fingers how many times he's thought I was wrong.
So that right there is our last clip. And again, I do not buy it. This so-called apology, it rings hollow. What this is all coming from is Stephen A. Smith being embarrassed by Kyrie Irving. And here's the odd thing. Stephen A. Smith's personal attacks on Kyrie. It shouldn't elicit an apology because Kyrie's playing well on the basketball court. You should apologize to Kyrie no matter how good or how bad he's playing, if you actually mean it. And the last thing I'll say is that Stephen A. Smith, if he's actually genuine, actually believes what he's saying, more power to him, he can sleep well at night. But watching the entire 9-minute segment, it just felt so fake, so inauthentic. And not once in these 9 minutes did he directly say, Kyrie Irving, I'm sorry, I apologize. Which I think is a mistake. He should say that, not dance around it for 9 minutes and kind of say, we all made mistakes. No, just say it. Kyrie, I was wrong, I apologize, and that's that. So that right there is the end of the video. As always, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.